I pulled into the driveway after a grueling double shift to find my whole life spilling out of black trash bags. My mother stood over the wreckage, beaming at a phone camera like a game show host while thousands of strangers watched. I did not scream. I just silently gathered my keys and drove away. Let them enjoy the likes now, because in 6 months, they would be on their knees begging me to save them from their own greed. My name is Avery Barnes. I was 32 years old, and I was currently smelling like a mixture of industrial floor cleaner and stale French fry grease. The heater in my Honda Civic was rattling, fighting a losing battle against the damp chill of a late October night in the suburbs of Cleveland, Ohio. My back ached in 3 different places. My feet felt swollen inside my non-slip work shoes. All I could think about was the generic rejection email I had received on my phone during my break at the diner. It was the 3rd one this week. I was tired. I was humiliated. I just wanted to crawl into the twin bed in my mother's basement, pull the quilt over my head, and sleep until noon. I turned the corner onto our street. It was a quiet neighborhood, the kind of place where people kept their lawns manicured and their secrets behind closed blinds. Most of the houses were dark, their windows blank and sleeping, except for one. My mother's house was lit up like a crime scene. At first, I thought it was the police. My heart hammered a sudden, violent rhythm against my ribs. I sat forward, gripping the steering wheel, squinting through the windshield. It was not the red and blue strobe of emergency services. It was a stark, blinding white circle, a ring light, a massive, professional-grade ring light standing on a tripod right in the middle of the driveway. I took my foot off the gas and let the car roll forward slowly. The scene unfolded in front of me like a grotesque piece of performance art. The driveway, usually empty except for my brother's truck when he visited, was strewn with black plastic. It looked like a garbage truck had exploded. But as I got closer, the headlights of my car swept over the debris, and I realized the garbage bags were not full of trash. They were ripped open. I saw a flash of blue knitted wool. My sweater. I saw the spine of a thick, leather-bound book. My portfolio. I saw the silver corner of a laptop casing sticking out of a puddle of mud. My stomach dropped so hard it felt like I had driven off a cliff. I put the car in park at the curb, killing the engine, but I did not get out immediately. I just watched. My mother, Darlene Barnes, was standing in the center of the chaos. She was wearing her Sunday best, a floral dress that she usually reserved for church or weddings, and her hair was done up in a stiff, hair-sprayed helmet of curls. She was holding a microphone, a wireless one attached to the smartphone mounted in the center of that blinding ring light. She was smiling. It was a wide, toothy smile that did not reach her eyes. She looked like a game show host introducing the grand prize. I cracked my car window just an inch. The cold air bit at my face, carrying her voice, amplified and sharp. "And look at this. Everyone," Darlene announced, gesturing grandly to the pile of my clothes soaking up the dirty driveway water. "This is what happens when you enable bad behavior. I have been too kind. I have been too soft. But tonight, we are taking our life back." She stepped over a pile of my sketchbooks. "She is 28 years old. You guys, 28? Can you believe it?" I sat frozen in the driver's seat. I was not 28. I was 32. She knew exactly how old I was. She had birthed me. But 28 sounded younger, more pathetic, more manageable for her narrative. It made me sound like a child who refused to grow up, rather than a woman who had hit a rough patch. "Actually," she corrected herself, leaning into the camera lens with a conspiratorial whisper, "she is well over 30, a parasite. That is the only word for it. A parasite living off my pension while I try to enjoy my golden years." A laugh barked out from the shadows near the garage. My brother, Gavin, stepped into the cone of artificial light. He was wearing his work boots and a grease-stained hoodie. He looked like he was having the time of his life. He held a can of beer in one hand and pointed at a garbage bag with the other. "Hey, Mom! You missed a spot," Gavin yelled. He wound up his leg and kicked the bag. It was heavy, likely full of my winter coats. The bag rolled, tearing further open on the asphalt, and tumbled directly into a large puddle of rainwater that had gathered near the drain. The dirty water splashed up, soaking the fabric inside. Gavin laughed again. It was a wet, ugly sound. To the right of the ring light, my sister Blair was moving like a predator. She held a secondary gimbal with her phone attached, filming from a different angle. She was circling the mess, getting close-ups of my humiliation. She panned the camera over my worn-out sneakers lying in the grass. She zoomed in on a box of personal hygiene products that had spilled open. "Sad tour," Blair narrated, her voice pitching up into that fake, bubbly influencer cadence she practiced in the mirror. "This is the reality of the boomerang generation. Guys, look at this. It is just sad. Total failure to launch." I felt a heat rising up my neck. It wasn't just anger. It was a mixture of shame and absolute disbelief. They were not just kicking me out. They were broadcasting it. I opened the car door. The sound of the latch clicking echoed in the quiet street. Darlene stopped talking mid-sentence. She squinted past the glare of the ring light. "Oh, look." Darlene's voice went up an octave. "Here she is. The princess returns from her job." She made air quotes around the word job. Blair whipped around, aiming her gimbal at me. I could see the screen of her phone glowing. The chat was scrolling so fast, it was a blur of white text on a translucent background. I stepped out of the car. The wind cut through my thin diner uniform. I kept my face blank. I had learned a long time ago that giving Darlene a reaction was like pouring gasoline on a fire. She fed on tears. She thrived on screaming matches. I walked up the driveway. My boots crunched on the gravel. "Say hello to the viewers, Avery," Blair chirped, shoving the phone camera inches from my face. "We have 3,000 people watching right now. They want to know why you think it is okay to mooch off our mother." I looked past the phone. I looked at the comments floating by. "Get a real job. Kick her out. Darlene useless. She looks older than 30. Trash." Thousands of strangers. People I had never met. People who didn't know I worked 60 hours a week. People who didn't know I paid rent for that damp basement. They were judging my entire existence based on a 30-second clip orchestrated by my family. "Well," Darlene goaded, stepping closer. "Nothing to say. No excuses this time." Gavin snickered. "She is speechless. Cat got your tongue. Ave." I walked past them. I did not look at Gavin. I did not look at Darlene. I walked straight to the center of the pile where my desk contents had been dumped. My laptop was ruined. The screen was cracked, spiderwebbed from where it had hit the pavement. That was fine. It was old anyway. My clothes were soaked. That was fine. Clothes could be washed or replaced. I scanned the debris with the precision of a hawk. I was looking for 3 things. I spotted the first one near the tire of Gavin's truck. It was a heavy-duty, waterproof document pouch. I lunged for it, snatching it up before Gavin could realize what I was doing. I felt the thickness of it. My birth certificate, my social security card, the title to my car, safe. "Oh, she is grabbing her precious papers," Darlene mocked to the camera. "Make sure you get that, Blair. She cares more about papers than her own mother." I ignored her. I continued my scan. There, under a pile of magazines, my external hard drive. It was ruggedized, orange rubber. It contained 10 years of design work, my portfolio, and my entire digital life. I grabbed it and shoved it into the deep pocket of my apron. One more thing. I kicked aside a wet cardboard box. I sifted through loose pens and tangled charging cables. "What are you looking for?" "Your dignity," Gavin shouted. Then I saw it. It was small, silver, and unremarkable to anyone else. A single key with a black plastic head. No label, no markings. It had fallen out of an old jewelry box that lay shattered near the grass. I snatched the key off the wet ground and closed my fist around it. The metal bit into my palm. It was cold and sharp. This key was the only thing I had left of my Aunt Sarah. I didn't know what it opened, but she had pressed it into my hand a week before she died and told me to keep it safe. I had what I needed. I stood up. "Get off my property," Darlene snapped, her voice suddenly dropping the sweet MC persona. "I want you gone, tonight, and don't think you are coming back to sneak inside." From across the street, a window opened. "Mr. Henderson," the neighborhood gossip who had lived there since the 80s, leaned out. "Yeah, you tell her. Darlene," he shouted. "Clean up the neighborhood." A cheer went up from the chat on Blair's phone. She was practically vibrating with excitement. This was her viral moment. This was the content that would finally get her the brand deals she was desperate for. I adjusted the document pouch under my arm. I took a breath. The air smelled of rain and betrayal. I turned slowly to face them. Blair was right there, the camera lens looking like a black, unblinking eye. I looked directly into it. I didn't scowl. I didn't cry. I didn't scream or beg or plead. I just looked. I stared into that lens with a dead, flat calmness that I didn't know I possessed. I imagined I was looking into the eyes of every single person typing hateful comments. I held the gaze for 1 second, 2 seconds. Blair actually took a half step back. The silence stretched, heavy and uncomfortable. For a brief moment, the chat slowed down. My expression wasn't the drama they wanted. It was a mirror, reflecting something ugly back at them. Then, I turned my back. "Hey," Gavin yelled, realizing the show was ending too soon. "Where do you think you're going?" I walked down the driveway. I stepped over my ruined duvet. I stepped past the broken remains of my favorite lamp. I reached my car and opened the door. "If you leave, Avery, you are dead to us," Darlene shrieked. It was a line from a soap opera, delivered with bad timing. "Do you hear me? You are nothing without me." I got into the car. I locked the doors. I placed the document pouch on the passenger seat and the hard drive in the cup holder. I kept the silver key in my hand, gripping it against the steering wheel. I started the engine. The heater rattled to life again. I put the car in reverse and backed out, leaving them there in their circle of artificial light. In the rearview mirror, I saw them standing like statues. Darlene was still talking to the camera, frantically trying to keep the momentum going, but the energy had shifted. They looked small. They looked ridiculous standing in the dark with their ring light and their trash bags. I drove. I didn't know where I was going. I had $42 in my bank account and half a tank of gas. I had no home. I had no family. My hands began to shake as the adrenaline started to fade, replaced by a cold, seeping shock. I wanted to pull over and vomit. I wanted to turn around and scream until my throat bled, but I didn't. I kept my eyes on the road, the yellow lines blurring slightly. If I said a single word, if I shed a single tear where they could see it, I would just be giving them an encore. I would be giving them part 2 of the show. I tightened my grip on the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. 6 months. I thought. The words formed in my mind with the solidity of a tombstone. 6 months. They thought this was the end. They thought they had won. They thought they had flushed the parasite out of the house and gained 10,000 followers in the process. They had no idea what they had actually done. They had no idea about the key in my hand, or the papers in the pouch, or the secrets buried in the trust they didn't know I knew about. 6 months from now, my phone would light up with 80 messages in a single night. 6 months from now, Darlene would not be smiling at a camera. She would be crying in a lawyer's office. 6 months from now, Gavin and Blair would realize that the sister they threw away was the only person who could save them from prison. But tonight, I let them have their views. Tonight, I let them think they were the heroes of the story. I merged onto the highway, the city lights of Cleveland fading behind me into a blur of orange and red. I didn't turn on the radio. I just drove into the dark, the silence my only companion. But to understand how a mother could throw her own daughter away for internet clout, and to understand exactly how I was going to make them pay for every single like and share. We have to go back. We have to go back to before the ring light, before the trash bags, before I became the villain in their little reality show. 6 months earlier. 6 months ago, life was boring in the most beautiful way possible. I lived in a 1-bedroom apartment on the north side of Columbus, Ohio. It was not a luxury suite. The carpet was a beige industrial loop that had seen better decades, and the view from my single window was of a brick wall and a dumpster that got emptied every Tuesday morning at 5. But it was mine. That was the currency I valued most. I had a ritual on the first of every month that gave me a quiet, vibrating sense of satisfaction. I would sit down at my small IKEA desk, open my laptop, and log into my bank account. I would click pay bill on my rent, my electric, my car insurance, and my student loan minimum payment. Watching the balances drop to near zero did not scare me. It reassured me. It meant I was solvent. It meant I was an adult who did not need to ask anyone for anything. I was the captain of my own very small, very tidy ship. I drove a Honda Civic that was 10 years old, but ran like a clock because I took it for oil changes exactly when the sticker told me to. I bought groceries on Sundays. I had a savings account with $2,000 in it, which I called my emergency fund. I felt invincible because I was responsible. My job was the anchor of this stability. I worked as a junior brand strategist at Northgate Creative Systems. It sounds fancy, but mostly it involved designing logos for regional plumbing companies and writing copy for dental insurance brochures. I did not mind. I liked the hum of the open plan office. I liked the free coffee in the break room that tasted like burnt hazelnuts. I liked that my badge opened the glass doors with a definitive beep. Then came the Tuesday afternoon that dismantled my life. There was no dramatic music. The sky did not turn gray. It was actually a bright, sunny afternoon when my manager, a man named Dave, who wore fleeces even in July, tapped on my cubicle wall. He asked me to step into the conference room. He did not make eye contact. I knew before I sat down. The air in the room felt thin. "Northgate is restructuring," Dave said. He looked at a spot on the wall just above my left ear. "We lost the contract with the healthcare provider. That was 40% of our quarterly revenue. We have to make cuts." I sat there, my hands folded in my lap, feeling the blood drain out of my face. I tried to do the math in my head instantly. Rent was due in 12 days. "Is this effective immediately?" I asked. My voice sounded steady, which surprised me. "Today is your last day," Dave said. He slid a manila envelope across the glass table. "We are offering 2 weeks of severance. It is just business. Avery, you know that. It is nothing personal. Just business." I packed my desk in 20 minutes. I put my stapler, my framed photo of a trip to Lake Erie, and my favorite mug into a cardboard box. I walked out to the parking lot, sat in my paid-off Honda, and cried for exactly 10 minutes. Then I stopped. I told myself I would figure it out. I had my emergency fund. I had a resume. But the world outside Northgate Creative Systems was colder than I remembered. I applied to 50 jobs in the first week. I got 3 automated rejections. By the 4th week, the silence from my inbox was deafening. The economy had tightened. Hiring freezes were in effect. And apparently, nobody in Ohio needed a brand strategist. I watched my bank account with a growing sense of dread. The $2,000, which had felt like a fortress, evaporated. Rent took $1,200, Cobra health insurance, because I was terrified of getting sick without coverage, took another $600, food, gas, internet. By the end of the 2nd month, I was staring at a balance of $84. I did the math again. I could not pay the next month's rent. I could not pay the car insurance. Eviction was not a possibility. It was a mathematical certainty. I held my phone in my hand for an hour before I made the call. I would have preferred to call a loan shark. I would have preferred to sleep in my car. But I was practical. I needed a roof. My mother, Darlene, answered on the 2nd ring. "Well," she said, after I choked out my request, "I wondered when this would happen." She did not say, "I'm sorry you lost your job." She did not say, "Come home. We love you." She validated her own prediction of my failure. "You can come back," she said. Her voice clipped. "But we need to set some ground rules. I am not running a charity hotel here. Avery, your father's pension only goes so far." I packed my life into the Honda. I sold my furniture for cash on a marketplace app. I broke my lease and lost my deposit. I drove 2 hours north to Cleveland, feeling like I was driving backward in time, regressing from a 32-year-old professional to a dependent child. The welcome home was a business meeting at the kitchen table. Darlene sat with a notepad. The house smelled the way it always did, potpourri masking the scent of old carpet. $400 a month, Darlene said, writing the figure down and circling it. That is for the room in the basement. You will also pay 1/3 of the electric and water, and you buy your own food. I cook for Gavin and Blair when they are here. But I am not a short-order cook for you. I don't have a job yet. Mom, I said, staring at the floral tablecloth. I have $80. Then you better get one fast, she said. The diner on Main Street is hiring. I saw a sign. It is not fancy design work, but it pays cash. So that is what I did. I took the basement. It was damp and smelled of mildew. The small windows were at ground level, so my view was of grass blades and car tires. I set up my laptop on a folding card table I found in the garage. I got the job at the diner the next day. I went from designing corporate identities to scraping dried egg yolk off ceramic plates. I worked double shifts. I came home smelling of grease and bleach, my feet throbbing. I handed Darlene $400 in cash on the first of the month, and she counted it in front of me, licking her thumb to separate the bills. But the money was not the worst part. The narrative was the worst part. On Sunday mornings, I would hear Darlene on the phone with her friends from the church group or the neighbors. She would lower her voice to a stage whisper, ensuring I could hear her through the thin floorboards. "Oh, yes, Avery is back," she would say, sighing heavily. "It is a trial, honestly. But what can a mother do? I could not let her live on the street. I had to save her. She just does not have that drive. You know, not like Gavin." She painted herself as the martyr, the benevolent savior catching her fallen child. But when she hung up the phone and saw me coming up from the basement for a glass of water, her face would harden. "Do not go out the front door looking like that," she would snap, gesturing to my diner uniform. "Use the side door. I do not want the neighbors thinking I'm running a boarding house for failures. Do not embarrass me. Avery." Then there was Gavin. My brother was 2 years older than me. He worked for a mobile mechanic service and made good money, or at least he acted like he did. He did not live at home, but he was always there, usually eating the food Darlene claimed she was too tired to cook for me. One Tuesday evening, about 3 months into my stay, I came up from the basement to heat up a can of soup. Gavin was sprawling at the kitchen table, picking at a roast chicken Darlene had made. He looked me up and down, blunt. She lived in the house rent-free because Darlene was convinced Blair was on the verge of becoming famous. For Blair, my return was not a family crisis. It was a set design opportunity. She would come down to the basement without knocking, her phone already recording. "Hey guys, so today we are doing a deeper cleaning of the house," she would say to the camera, panning around my cramped living space. She would angle the shot so I was in the background, hunched over my laptop in the dim light. "Can you not film me?" I asked once, shielding my face. Blair rolled her eyes but kept the camera rolling. "Relax, Avery. You are just in the background. It adds to the aesthetic. Authentic family struggles. You know, people relate to that." She edited the videos later. I watched one on her TikTok. She had put a gray filter over the clips of me, making me look even more haggard and depressing, while she remained in bright, saturated color. The caption read, "Grateful for my hustle so I never end up stuck." Family vibes. Motivation. I was a prop. I was the before picture in her after lifestyle. I lay in the twin bed that night, listening to the furnace rumble next to my head. I stared at the unfinished ceiling beams. I felt small. I felt erased. The Avery who paid her bills and had a clean apartment felt like a character from a book I had read a long time ago. But I had a plan. I was saving. I was applying. I had a spreadsheet on my laptop tracking every penny. Just a few months. I whispered to the darkness, "Just endure it. Keep your head down. Save $2,000. Get a deposit. Leave." I thought I could fly under the radar. I thought if I paid my rent and stayed quiet, they would eventually get bored of kicking me. I did not realize that for people like Darlene, Gavin, and Blair, kicking someone when they were down was not a pastime. It was an addiction, and they were just getting started. The basement air was heavy, a stagnant mix of damp concrete and the metallic smell of my overheating laptop. My workspace was a masterclass in desperation. The folding table wobbled every time I typed more than 30 words a minute, and my laptop, a relic from my college days, was currently on life support. The battery held zero charge. If the magnetic power cord wiggled even a fraction of an inch to the left, the screen would die instantly. It was like performing surgery on a patient who was constantly trying to flatline. I sat there at 2 a.m, the blue light of the monitor reflecting in my tired eyes, sending out application number 45 for the week. Junior graphic designer, marketing coordinator, social media assistant. I was overqualified for all of them. Yet I tailored every cover letter with the precision of a diamond cutter, begging for the chance to earn a fraction of what I used to make. Above my head, the floorboards creaked. I knew the rhythm of the house. That heavy, dragging step was my mother. Darlene, getting a glass of water. The quicker, lighter thud was Blair, likely pacing while on a late-night call. I was not living with them. I was living under them. The first of the month arrived with the grim inevitability of a tax audit. I had just returned from a double shift at the diner, my apron smelling of burnt coffee and maple syrup. I had the cash ready. I always had the cash ready. It was the one shield I had left. Darlene was waiting for me in the kitchen. She sat at the head of the table, a calculator placed neatly beside her tea mug. "Here," I said, placing the envelope on the table. $400, plus $62 for the electric bill share. Darlene did not say thank you. She picked up the envelope and opened it. She pulled out the bills, 20s, mostly, from my tips and began to count them. She licked her thumb before snapping each bill down onto the tablecloth. Snap, snap, snap. It was a performance. She was checking for counterfeits. She was checking for mistakes. She was checking to see if I would flinch. "The water bill was higher this month," she said, not looking up. "You are taking too many showers. I heard the pipes running at midnight." "I work at a diner." "Mom," I said, keeping my voice level. "I come home smelling like grease. I need to shower." "It creates moisture in the basement," she countered, finally looking at me. Her eyes were hard, assessing. "Mold is expensive to fix. Avery, I am already doing you a favor by letting you stay here at this rate. Do not make me regret my charity." "I am paying rent," I reminded her. "It is not charity." Darlene laughed. It was a short, sharp sound. $400 in this economy that barely covers the inconvenience of having you back. Do not forget, Avery, you still owe me for 18 years of raising you. The food, the clothes, the braces on your teeth. You think a few $100s makes us even... I bit the inside of my cheek until I tasted copper. This was the trap. In Darlene's ledger, I was born with a debt I could never repay. Existence was a loan she had granted me, and the interest rate was variable based on her mood. I went downstairs without arguing. If I argued, the rent would go up. 2 days later, the boundary violations escalated from financial to physical. I had a rare morning off. I planned to drive to the public library to use their high-speed internet for a video interview I had managed to secure. I grabbed my keys and went out to the driveway. My Honda was gone. Panic, cold and sharp, spiked in my chest. I thought it had been repossessed. I thought I had missed a payment. I pulled out my phone to call the police, but then I saw a text from Gavin. Borrowed the whip. My truck is in the shop. Back by noon. He had not asked. He had just taken. My spare key hung on the hook by the back door, and he had just helped himself. I waited. Noon came and went. My interview time was 1 o'clock. I paced the driveway, calling his phone. It went straight to voicemail, at 1:15. I missed the interview. I sat on the front porch steps, head in my hands, listening to the birds chirp in the suburban silence. The opportunity I had spent 3 days preparing for was gone. At 2:30, my Honda rolled into the driveway. Gavin hopped out, whistling, swinging the keys on his finger. "You missed your time," I said. standing up. My voice was trembling, not with sadness, but with a rage I was struggling to cap. I had an interview. Gavin, I missed it. He looked at me, genuinely confused. Chill out, Ave. It is just a car. I had to run parts across town. Emergency job. Big money. You could have asked, I said. You could have texted before you took it. We are family, he said, tossing the keys at me. I fumbled to catch them. What is mine is yours. Right family does not count pennies or miles. Do not be so uptight. That is probably why you got fired from the city job. You stress too much. I got into the car to move it into the garage. The fuel light was screaming orange on the dashboard. The range indicator read 4 miles to empty. He had driven it until the tank was dry and left it for me to fill. I gripped the steering wheel, my knuckles turning white. Family doesn't count pennies, he had said, but they certainly counted mine. The invasions of privacy were subtler but more dangerous. My basement room had no lock. I had asked to install one, and Darlene had forbidden it, claiming it was a fire hazard, but I knew it was because she hated a closed door she couldn't open. Blair started coming down more often. She would breeze down the stairs, her phone always in her hand, usually recording a TikTok or checking her angles. Hey, Avery, she would say, her voice overly sweet. Can I borrow your ring light? Mine is acting weird. It is in the corner, I would say, not looking up from my laptop screen. She would walk over to the equipment, but I could feel her presence lingering behind my chair. She wasn't looking at the ring light. She was looking at the stack of papers on my desk. She was looking at my screen. Who are you emailing? She asked once, leaning over my shoulder. Is that a lawyer? I minimized the window instantly. It wasn't a lawyer. It was just a job application. But her curiosity felt predatory. Just work, Blair, I said. You don't have work, she corrected me, picking up a notepad and idly flipping through it. You have a job at a diner. This other stuff, it is just a hobby, right? Like, you are not actually making money. Please don't touch my notes, I said, taking the pad from her hand. She smirked, grabbing the ring light. Touchy. You know, Mom says you are getting obsessive down here, like a hermit. It is not healthy. She left, but the feeling of being watched remained. I started hiding my notebook under the mattress. I started clearing my browser history every time I stood up. Then, the breakthrough happened. It was a Tuesday afternoon. The email pinged into my inbox with a subject line that made my heart stop. Offer of contract employment. Indianapolis Creative Solutions. I opened it, my hands shaking. It was a remote position, branding consultant, 6-month contract with a strong possibility of converting to full-time. The pay was not what I made before, but it was enough. It was enough to rent an apartment in Dayton or maybe a studio in Cincinnati. It was enough to leave. I read the contract 3 times to make sure it was real. I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. The relief was so physical, it felt like a weight being lifted off my lungs. I made a mistake then. I let my guard down. I went upstairs to dinner that night feeling lighter than I had in months. Darlene was serving meatloaf. Gavin was there, complaining about a customer who refused to pay for a transmission flush. Blair was editing photos on her phone at the table. I have news, I said. I couldn't help the smile that tugged at the corners of my mouth. The table went quiet. They looked at me, not with anticipation, but with suspicion. I got a job, I said. A real one, in my field. It is a remote contract with a firm in Indianapolis. It starts in 2 weeks. I waited for the congratulations. I waited for good job. Darlene set her fork down slowly. She chewed, swallowed, and wiped her mouth with a napkin. Contract, she asked. So, not a real job, freelance. It is full-time hours, I explained, the excitement leaking out of me like air from a punctured tire. And it pays well. I can move out in a month or 2. The atmosphere in the room shifted instantly. It went cold. Move out, Gavin laughed, shaking his head. You just got here. You are going to bail on Mom again, after she set up that whole room for you. I thought the point was for me to get back on my feet, I said, looking at Darlene. Darlene sighed, a sound of profound disappointment. Avery, you always do this. You get one little bit of good news, and you think you are Queen of England. Freelance is barely a step up from unemployment. It is unstable. It is childish. You need security. This is security, I argued. It is a signed contract. For 6 months, Darlene pointed out. And then what? You will be back here, crying on my doorstep, except this time you will have wasted money on an apartment you cannot afford. She leaned forward, her eyes locking onto mine. People like you, Avery, she said softly, are not built for the high-pressure world. You crumble. We saw it happen. Why can you not just be grateful for the simple life work at the diner? Save your money here. Stop trying to be something you are not. People like you. The phrase hung in the air. It wasn't just an insult. It was a diagnosis. She was telling me that my failure was innate, genetic, inevitable. She didn't want me to succeed because my success proved her wrong. My dependence made her feel powerful. My independence made her feel obsolete. I looked at Gavin, who was smirking. I looked at Blair, who was barely hiding a smile. They didn't want me to leave. They needed someone to be the mess, so they could feel clean. I am going to take it, I said quietly. Do what you want, Darlene said, picking up her fork. But do not come crying to me when it falls apart, and do not think you can stop paying rent just because you have some imaginary internet job. I finished my dinner in silence. I washed the dishes. I went back downstairs. My heart was pounding with a new kind of rhythm. It wasn't fear anymore. It was clarity. They were not my safety net. They were the spider web. I sat down at my wobbly table. I changed the password on my laptop to a string of random characters 20 digits long. I took my external hard drive and taped it to the underside of the lowest drawer in the dresser, a place no one would look. I gathered my birth certificate and passport and put them in my bag, but in my haste, in the swirling, chaotic energy of my anger and determination, I made a critical error. I had printed out the offer letter and the non-disclosure agreement from the Indianapolis firm to sign and scan back to them. I signed them with a flourish of blue ink. Then, tired and emotionally drained, I turned off the light. I crawled into bed. I left the papers sitting right there on the table, in the dark. I stared at the ceiling. The silence of the house felt different now. It wasn't just quiet. It was waiting. My news hadn't been received as a victory. It had been received as a threat. I had signaled that I was planning to escape, and I had foolishly assumed they would let me walk out the door without a fight. As I drifted into a restless sleep, I didn't know that upstairs. The floorboards were creaking not because Darlene was getting water, but because plans were changing. I had shown my hand. Now, they were going to play theirs. The morning of the day my life imploded began with a request that was so mundane, so helpful on the surface, that I should have known it was a trap. I was down in the basement, buttoning my diner uniform. My eyes felt gritty from lack of sleep. The contract from Indianapolis was still sitting on the folding table, a stark white rectangle against the fake wood grain. I had fallen asleep staring at it, and in my rush to get ready for the breakfast shift, I had not yet filed it away. I heard the basement door creak open. Steps thudded down the stairs quick, light, energetic. Avery, are you decent? It was Blair. She rounded the corner wearing a full face of makeup at 8 in the morning. She was holding 2 mugs of coffee. This was unprecedented. Blair did not share caffeine. Blair hoarded caffeine. I brought you the dregs of the pot, she said, holding out a mug that said Girl Boss in gold script. Peace offering. I know I was annoying about the ring light the other day. I took the mug. Suspicious. Thanks. What is with the face? I gestured to her heavy contouring and false lashes. Oh, huge day, she said, leaning against the support beam, blocking my view of the table. I have a brand deal I need to film, like emergency turnaround. Actually, that is why I came down. Can I borrow the ring light again, and maybe the tripod? My gear it is glitching. Sure, I said, taking a sip of the coffee. It was lukewarm and overly sweet. Just put it back when you are done. I might need it tonight for a video call. Totally, she said. She didn't move toward the equipment, though. She stood there, smiling a little too widely. Hey, come upstairs for a second. Mom made cinnamon rolls, the ones from the can. But still, you look like you need sugar. I have to go to work. Blair? Just for 5 minutes, she insisted, actually reaching out and tugging my sleeve. Come on, don't be antisocial. Mom is actually in a good mood. I looked back at my table. The contract was right there. I should have put it in my bag. I should have locked it in the drawer with my hard drive. But Blair was pulling me, and the prospect of a 5-minute truce with my family was tempting enough to override my survival instincts. Fine, I said. 5 minutes? I followed her upstairs. We ate the cinnamon rolls. Darlene was indeed in a good mood, humming as she wiped down the counters. It was a bizarre, Rockwellian scene that felt completely staged. After 10 minutes, I realized I was going to be late. I have to go, I said, grabbing my keys. Wait, you forgot your apron downstairs, Blair chirped. I will get it. No, I can get it, I said, already turning back to the basement door. I ran down the stairs. I grabbed my apron from the hook. I glanced at the table. My stomach gave a small, weird lurch. The papers were there. The contract, the NDA, the offer letter. They were in a neat stack, just as I had left them. But they were too neat. I remembered leaving the offer letter slightly askew. Covering the corner of the NDA, now, the edges were perfectly aligned, parallel to the edge of the table. Someone had touched them. I looked up. The ceiling floorboards were silent. Blair hadn't come down. Had she touched them before I came up? Had she been reading them while blocking my view? Avery, you are going to miss your shift, Darlene yelled from the top of the stairs. Coming, I yelled back. I shoved the papers into my bag. A cold prickle of unease running down my spine. It was just paranoia. I told myself. I was just edgy because I was finally close to escaping. I grabbed the ring light and brought it up for Blair, who took it with a smirk that I couldn't quite decipher. Thanks, sis, she said. This is going to be a game changer for my content. I didn't know how right she was. When I came back from the morning shift at 2 p.m. for my split break, the atmosphere in the house had shifted from manic cheer to something more clinical. Darlene was standing in the hallway, holding a clipboard. She looked like a hospital administrator. I have been thinking, she said as soon as I walked in. That basement is a health hazard. The dust, the clutter, it is not good for you. Avery, I took off my shoes, wary. I keep it clean. Mom? Not clean enough, she said, marking something on her clipboard. I am going to schedule a deep clean, a purge. We need to get rid of the old energy down there. Help you start fresh. You know, for your new freelance thing. I don't need a purge, I said, stepping between her and the basement door. I just need to work. Don't be ungrateful, she snapped, the mask slipping for a second. I am trying to help you organize your life. You are drowning in clutter, mental and physical. I am giving you a chance to reset. She smiled then, but it didn't reach her eyes. It was the smile of a shark that had just scented blood in the water. Go rest. You have the night shift, right? Yeah, 5 to closing. Good. Work hard. I went downstairs. I checked my things. Nothing seemed missing, but the air felt charged, like the ozone smell before a thunderstorm. I tried to nap, but I couldn't. I lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the muffled sounds of heavy furniture being moved upstairs. At 4:30, I went outside to leave for my second shift. Gavin was there. He was sitting on the tailgate of his truck, which was parked on the street, not in the driveway. He was wearing a clean hoodie, not his usual work clothes. He was smoking a cigarette, watching the house. Hey, I said, unlocking my car. You are off early. Slow day, Gavin said. He didn't look at me. He was looking at the front lawn. Just waiting around. Mom said she is making a big dinner later. Nice. Save me some, I said automatically. Yeah, Gavin said. He took a long drag of the smoke and finally looked at me. There was a weird glint in his eyes. Anticipation, nervousness. You have a good shift, Avery. Drive safe. It was the drive safe that stuck with me. Gavin never told me to drive safe. He usually told me to drive faster so I wouldn't be late. I drove to the diner. The evening rush was brutal. I ran from table to table, pouring coffee, balancing plates of pancakes and burgers. The noise was deafening, the clatter of silverware, the hiss of the grill, the screaming of a toddler in booth 4. Usually, when I had a second to breathe, I would check my phone. The family group chat, titled Barnes Bunch, was usually active around dinner time. Blair posting pictures of her food, Mom complaining about the neighbors, Gavin sending memes. Tonight, I checked it at 6. Nothing. I checked it at 7. Silence. I checked it at 8. Dead air. The silence was heavy. It was the silence of a group of people who were communicating, just not with me. They had a side channel. I knew it in my gut. By the time I clocked out at 10, my anxiety was a physical weight in my chest. I felt like I was walking on a tightrope over a pit of vipers. I just wanted to get home, lock myself in the basement, and sign the contract online. Then I would sleep. I drove home. The streets were dark. The closer I got to the house, the tighter my chest felt. I turned the corner, and then I saw the light. The scene from earlier that night played out again. But this time, the shock was replaced by a horrifying, crystal-clear understanding. I saw the ring light my ring light, the one Blair had borrowed for her brand deal. I saw the trash bags, the result of Darlene's deep clean and fresh start. I saw Gavin, who had been waiting on his tailgate for hours for the show to start. It wasn't a tantrum. It wasn't a spur-of-the-moment eviction because they were mad about the rent. It was a production. I sat in my car, watching my mother perform for the live stream. The pieces clicked into place with the violence of a car crash. Blair distracting me, Darlene scoping out the room, Gavin waiting for the call time. They had planned this. They had scripted this. They waited until I was at work, defenseless, to execute the scene for maximum dramatic effect. I walked up the driveway. I felt numb, detached, like I was watching a movie of myself. I ignored Darlene's voice, which was shrill and theatrical. I ignored Blair's camera lens, which looked like the barrel of a gun. I walked into the debris field of my life. I grabbed the waterproof pouch with my documents. I grabbed the hard drive from my apron pocket where I had luckily kept it. I looked down at a pile of papers that had been dumped into a puddle, my sketchbooks, my notes, and there, half buried under a torn envelope, was something that caught the glare of the ring light. It was a key. It wasn't one of mine. It was small, silver, with a generic black plastic head. It had fallen out of a ripped manila folder that I didn't recognize, a folder made of thick, expensive cardstock, cream-colored. Not the cheap yellow Office Depot kind I used. The folder was shredded, destroyed by Gavin's boots or the wet pavement. But the key remained. I didn't know what it was. I didn't remember buying it. I didn't remember ever seeing it before. But my hand moved on its own. I reached down, my fingers brushing against the cold, wet asphalt, and snatched the key. I closed my fist around it. It felt heavy. It felt important. Get out. Darlene was screaming now, hitting her crescendo. I looked at the camera. I gave them that one. Long stare. The stare that said, I see you. Then I walked away. I got into my car. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely turn the ignition. I backed out, leaving the circus behind. I didn't go to a hotel. I didn't go to a parking lot. I drove straight to the one place I hadn't visited in 6 months because I was too ashamed of my situation. I drove to Jenna's. Jenna was my best friend from college. She was a paralegal, sharp as a tack, cynical, and fiercely loyal. I had ghosted her when I lost my job because I couldn't bear to tell her I was living in my mother's basement. Now, I was showing up on her doorstep at 11 at night, soaking wet, homeless, and holding a mysterious key. I parked in front of her apartment complex. I turned off the engine. The silence of the car was sudden and overwhelming. I opened my hand. The key was sitting in my palm, warm now from my body heat. It was just a small piece of metal, but as I looked at it, a strange memory flickered in the back of my mind. A memory of my Aunt Sarah, my mother's sister who had passed away 2 years ago. If you ever get locked out. Avery. She had whispered to me once at a family barbecue, pressing something into my hand that I had laughed off and shoved into a junk drawer. You make sure you have a way back in. Was this it? Had this been in the junk drawer I had emptied into a box when I moved home? I didn't know, but as I stared at the key, I felt a shift in the universe. They had thrown out my trash, but they had accidentally handed me a weapon. I got out of the car and walked to the buzzer. I pressed the button for 4B. "Who is it?" Jenna's voice crackled, groggy and annoyed. "It's Avery," I said, my voice breaking for the first time that night. "I need help, and I think I found something." Jenna pulled the door open before I could press the buzzer a second time. She was wearing oversized flannel pajamas and her hair was wrapped in a silk scarf, but her eyes were wide awake and sharp as broken glass. She did not ask if I was okay. She did not hug me. She looked at my soaked uniform, the garbage bag full of clothes I was clutching to my chest, and the wild look in my eyes. Then she stepped back and said 4 words, "Show me the video." I walked into her apartment. It smelled of lavender and old books, a scent that usually calmed me, but tonight my adrenaline was spiking too high for comfort. I dropped my bag on her floor and collapsed onto her beige sofa. My hands were shaking so badly I could hardly unlock my phone. "I can't," I whispered. "I can't watch it again. Jenna, I lived it 10 minutes ago." "We are not watching it for entertainment," Jenna said, grabbing her laptop from the coffee table and sitting next to me. "We are watching it for evidence." Blair is an idiot, but she is a high-definition idiot. If they filmed a crime scene, we need to see the body. My phone buzzed. It was a direct message on Instagram from a user I did not recognize. The handle was something generic like Ohio Gal 99. The message was short. I screen-recorded this before she deleted the VOD. "Thought you should have it. Your family is messed up." "Send it to me," Jenna commanded. I forwarded the file. Jenna opened it on her laptop and cast it to her large television screen. Suddenly, my mother was 5 feet tall in Jenna's living room. The image was crisp, illuminated by the harsh, professional glare of the ring light. I saw myself walking up the driveway. I looked small and tired. I saw Gavin kick the bag. I saw the water splash. "Pause," Jenna said. The image froze. Gavin's leg was mid-swing. "Look at the trash," Jenna said, pointing at the screen. "Avery, look at the trash." I forced myself to look. It was just a pile of my life. Old clothes. Sketchbooks. "No," Jenna said, leaning forward, her eyes narrowing. "Look at the texture. That is not printer paper. That is not a magazine." She tapped the arrow key, advancing the video frame by frame. The bag Gavin had kicked had split open. Amidst the wet socks and cheap receipts, a rectangular object had slid out. It was a long envelope. Even on the screen, the color was distinct, a rich creamy ivory, not the stark white of junk mail, and on the flap, caught in the unforgiving light of the LED ring, was a raised, embossed seal. "That is linen stock," Jenna murmured. She worked at a law firm. She knew her stationery. "That is 25 cents an envelope. Nobody sends a bill or a flyer in that. That is formal correspondence." I squinted. A memory, sharp and sudden, pierced through the fog of my exhaustion. I had seen envelopes like that before. Years ago, when I was fresh out of college and living at home for a brief stint, I used to see them in the mail stack on the kitchen counter. Thick, heavy envelopes addressed to me, but every time I reached for them, Darlene would be there. "Oh, those are just tax updates," she would say, snatching them away with a dismissive wave of her hand. "Boring IRS stuff, totally incomprehensible. I will put them with the family file so the accountant can handle it. Don't worry your pretty little head about it." I had believed her. Why would I doubt my mother about taxes? I hated paperwork. I was grateful she was handling it. "Zoom in," I said. My voice sounded hollow. Jenna pinched the trackpad. The image magnified. The resolution held up. We could read the return address printed in elegant black serif font in the corner of the envelope. Klein Associates, attorneys at law. That is not an accountant, Jenna said flatly. That is a high-end estate planning firm in downtown Cleveland. Why is a high-end estate firm writing to you? Avery. I don't know, I said. I never opened them. Okay, keep watching, Jenna said. She hit play. On screen. Blair was panning the camera, doing her sad tour commentary. The camera swept over the folding table that Gavin had tossed onto the grass. My papers were scattered everywhere. Stop, I shouted. Jenna slammed the spacebar. Go back. 2 seconds. She rewound. The camera panned over the wet grass. Lying face up, soaking in a puddle, was a single sheet of paper that must have fallen out of that cream envelope or another one like it. The water had made the paper translucent, but the bold header was still legible in black ink. Account Summary, Q3, 2024. Beneficiary: Avery Jean Barnes Entity, the Barnes Family Trust. The air left the room. Trust, I whispered. We don't have a trust. We are broke. Mom clips coupons for laundry detergent. Jenna turned to me, her face pale. Avery, broke people do not have trusts managed by Klein Associates, and broke people certainly do not receive quarterly account summaries. I reached into my pocket. My fingers closed around the cold metal of the silver key I had snatched from the driveway. I pulled it out and held it up to the light. The key, I said. It fell out of a folder, a thick folder. I looked at the key properly for the first time. It was not a house key. It was flat, with a specific groove pattern and a number stamped into the metal 404. That is a safe deposit box key, Jenna said, or a private document box key. Aunt Sarah, I said. The realization hit me so hard I felt dizzy. My Aunt Sarah, she was in real estate. She died 2 years ago. Everyone said she died with debt. Mom said there was nothing left but bills. Your mom is a liar, Jenna said. It wasn't an insult. It was a statement of fact based on the evidence on the screen. And she just broadcasted the proof to 3,000 people because she was too arrogant to check the trash before she threw it out. I didn't sleep. I spent the night on Jenna's couch, staring at the ceiling, replaying every conversation I had ever had with Darlene about money, the guilt trips, the rent payments, the way she scrutinized my grocery receipts. You owe me, she had said. You are a parasite. At 8 o'clock the next morning, I called the number I had memorized from the envelope on the screen. Klein Associates, how may I direct your call? The receptionist's voice was smooth as velvet. My name is Avery Barnes, I said. I was surprised by how steady my voice was. I am calling to speak to Marianne Klein. There was a pause, a click, then a different voice came on the line. It was older, authoritative, and sharp. Avery Barnes, the woman asked. Is this truly Avery Barnes? Yes, I said. I believe you have been sending me mail. Sending you mail. Marianne Klein let out a dry, humorless laugh. Ms. Barnes, we have been sending you certified letters for 18 months. We have sent couriers. Your mother turned them all away. She claimed you were indisposed. She claimed you were mentally unstable and that she had power of attorney to handle your correspondence. I gripped the phone so hard I thought the plastic might crack. She said I was unstable. She implied it strongly enough that we were preparing to petition the court for a welfare check. Marianne said, We manage the Sarah Jenkins Trust. You are the sole beneficiary of the liquid assets and a 50% stakeholder in the real estate portfolio. Your brother and sister were left specific chaotic sums $5,000 each, but the bulk of the estate was left to you. Sarah was very clear. She said you were the only one with a head for the future. The room spun. Sole beneficiary, real estate portfolio. Why didn't I know? I asked. Because the correspondence was going to your address of record. Marianne explained, which, for the last 6 months, has been your mother's house, and before that, when you moved, We received a change of address form redirecting mail to her house, signed by you, or at least, signed with your name. Forgery. She had forged my signature to steal my inheritance while I was scrubbing dishes to pay her rent. I need to see the file, I said. I need to see everything. Can you come in today? Marianne asked. We are located in the Tower City building. I will be there in an hour, I said. I hung up. Jenna was standing in the kitchen doorway, holding 2 mugs of coffee. She had heard enough. So, she asked. She stole it, I said. The anger that had been burning hot all night suddenly cooled into something solid and terrifyingly heavy. It settled in my gut like a stone. She knew about the trust. She hid the letters. She forged my signature. And I looked at the silver key on the coffee table. And she probably has not been able to access the main capital because she did not have this, I said, picking up the key. This must be for the physical deed box or the authentication. Aunt Sarah gave it to me directly. Mom could not get to the money without me, so she tried to break me until I signed whatever she put in front of me. Jenna sat down next to me. What are you going to do? Are you going to go over there, scream at her, post the truth on TikTok? I thought about the ring light. I thought about the comments scrolling by, get a job, parasite. I thought about Gavin laughing as he kicked my life into a puddle. If I went there now, screaming and crying, I would just be the crazy daughter again. Darlene would spin it. She would say I was delusional. She would say I was making it up. She would gaslight the entire internet. No. I stood up. I walked over to my bag and pulled out the hard drive. I pulled out my birth certificate. I picked up the silver key. No more show, I said. I am not giving them 1 more second of content. Then what is the plan? Jenna asked. I am going to the lawyer, I said. I am going to get the accounting. I am going to get every single bank statement, every forged signature, and every lie on paper. I am going to build a mountain of evidence so high that when it falls on them, they will not be able to breathe. I looked at Jenna, and for the first time in 24 hours, I smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. They wanted a reality show, I said. I am going to give them a courtroom drama. The drive to Dayton, Ohio, took exactly 55 minutes from the motel where I had stayed for 3 nights. I had chosen Dayton for a specific reason. It was close enough to Cleveland to meet with my lawyer when necessary, but far enough away that I would never accidentally run into Gavin at a gas station or see Blair filming in a park. It was a demilitarized zone. I signed the lease on a studio apartment in a converted warehouse district. It was not large. It was essentially a concrete box with a kitchenette and a large window overlooking the river. But it was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. The rent was reasonable, covered comfortably by the first installment of my contract with the Indianapolis firm. For the first time in 6 months, I did not have to ask permission to open a window. I did not have to listen for footsteps above my head. The first thing I did was quit the diner. I did not give 2 weeks of notice. I called the manager, thanked him for the opportunity, and told him I would not be coming back. He was annoyed, but he had replaced 3 waitresses in the last month alone. I was just another statistic to him. The second thing I did was buy a desk. I went to a furniture store and bought a solid oak desk, not a folding table, not a piece of plywood on sawhorses. A real desk with heavy drawers that glided shut with a satisfying thump. I set it up near the window. I bought an ergonomic chair. I bought a lamp that didn't flicker. When I sat down to log in for my first day of remote work, the silence in the apartment felt strange. For months, silence had been a punishment. Silence meant I was being ignored, or that Darlene was stewing in her anger, preparing to strike. But here, silence was just peace. It was a blank canvas. I worked. I designed branding kits. I answered emails. I joined video calls where people called me Avery and asked for my professional opinion, not my table number. I felt the rust falling off my brain. I was not a parasite. I was a professional. And every dollar that landed in my new bank account at a bank my mother did not know existed was a brick in the wall I was building between us. But while I rebuilt my days, my nights were dedicated to the demolition of theirs. Marianne Klein was as efficient as a surgeon. 2 weeks after I hired her, a courier delivered a heavy packet to my new address. It was the accounting. I sat at my new oak desk, a cup of tea steaming beside me, and opened the file. It was a forensic dissection of the Barnes family trust. Aunt Sarah had been smarter than I gave her credit for. She had known Darlene was terrible with money. She had known Gavin was reckless. So, she had locked the assets up. The trust held 3 primary assets. First, a 30% ownership stake in the house in Cleveland, the house Darlene lived in, the house she had kicked me out of. Technically, I owned the basement I had been sleeping in and the driveway where they had thrown my clothes. Second, a 50% equity stake in Gavin's Mobile Mechanics. Aunt Sarah had provided the seed money for his first truck years ago, and she had retained equity to ensure he paid it back. He never had. Third, and most surprising, was a commercial property, a self-storage facility called Safe Keep Storage, on the outskirts of town. It was a modest operation, 200 units, but it generated steady, passive income. I read the lines of the ledger, my finger tracing the numbers. Revenue, revenue, revenue. Then I hit the section marked Liabilities and Encumbrances. My heart hammered against my ribs. There was a loan, a massive 6-figure business loan taken out 18 months ago. The collateral listed for the loan was the Safe Keep Storage facility. I flipped to the next page to see the authorization. Borrower Darlene Barnes. Trustee, cosigner. Beneficiary approval, Avery Barnes. I stared at the signature. It was a looping, elegant scrawl. It looked like my handwriting. It had the same slant, the same pressure points. If I did not know better, I might have thought I wrote it, but I had not. 18 months ago, I was living in Columbus, working my corporate job, completely unaware that this trust even existed. I picked up my phone and dialed Marianne. "You saw it?" Marianne asked. She did not waste time with pleasantries. "I see a signature that is not mine," I said. "She forged my name to mortgage the storage units." "Correct," Marianne said. "We ran a preliminary handwriting analysis. It is a decent forgery, likely practiced, but it has tremors consistent with hesitation. But here's the part that will interest you. Avery, we traced the disbursement of the loan funds." "Where did the money go?" I asked, though I had a sick feeling I already knew. "It did not go into the storage business," Marianne said. "It went into 2 personal accounts. One belongs to Gavin Barnes. It appears to have paid off a significant amount of credit card debt and purchased a new hydraulic lift system. And the other half went to a business entity registered as Blair B. Creative," Marianne said. "The itemized expenses include high-end camera equipment, lighting rigs, a studio renovation, and travel expenses for content trips." I closed my eyes. The ring light, the massive, blinding ring light that Blair had set up in the driveway to broadcast my humiliation to the world. The camera she had shoved in my face. The microphone Darlene had held like a game show host. They had bought the instruments of my destruction with my own stolen money. The irony was so sharp it felt like a physical puncture wound. They hadn't just kicked me out. They had used my inheritance to finance the production quality of the eviction. "This is fraud," I said. "This is embezzlement." "It is," Marianne confirmed. "And because she used the trust assets as collateral without the consent of the primary beneficiary, she has breached her fiduciary duty. If the bank finds out the signature is forged, they will call the loan immediately. They will seize the storage units. But before we pull that trigger, we need to be bulletproof. What do I do?" "You document," Marianne said. "We are moving to the discovery phase. I am going to demand a full audit of every receipt, but you need to gather everything you have on your end. Texts, emails, videos, anything that proves their intent or their knowledge of your financial status." I hung up and opened a new folder on my laptop. I named it The Receipts. I started with the live stream. Jenna had sent me the file. I watched it again, not with pain this time, but with a cold, analytical eye. I noted the timestamp when Darlene claimed I was a parasite. I cross-referenced it with the date on the loan document where she had stolen $100,000 in my name. Lie. I typed in my spreadsheet. Claim Avery is a financial burden. Fact Avery is the unknowingly funding source for the household. I went through my text messages. I found texts from Gavin asking for gas money. Texts from Darlene demanding rent. Gavin, yo. Can I get 20 for the tank? Card isn't working. Date November 12th. Context: Gavin had received $50,000 of trust money 4 months prior. I found the reviews on my professional portfolio. The 1-star ratings that had appeared the day after the live stream. Unprofessional, rude, stole designs. The usernames were fake, but the linguistic patterns were familiar. One used the word aesthetic 3 times. Blair. I took screenshots. I logged IP addresses where I could. I built a timeline of abuse that ran parallel to a timeline of theft. 2 days later. Marianne called me again. Her voice was lower, more serious. I sent the initial demand letter this morning, she said. I informed them that I represent you and that we are conducting a review of the trust's administration. I did not mention the forgery yet. I want to see how they react. They will panic, I said. They will do more than panic, Marianne warned. Avery, you need to be ready. When people like this get cornered, they do not confess. They attack. And then, when attacking does not work, they manipulate. I am ready, I said. Are you? Marianne asked. They are going to call you. They are going to cry. Your mother will talk about her health. She will say she did it for the family. She will say you are ungrateful. She will try to make you feel like the villain for asking where your money went. I looked out the window at the river flowing steadily through Dayton. I thought about the key in my pocket. Let them call, I said. You need a script, Marianne said. Do not engage. Do not explain. Do not justify. Every word you say can be twisted. You have one phrase. Avery, memorize it. Refer to my lawyer, I said. Exactly, Marianne said. Say it until it loses all meaning. Say it until it is a shield. If they text, you reply with my email address. If they show up, you call the police. You are not their daughter right now. You are a plaintiff. The first text came at 7 p.m. It was from Blair. Blair, OMG Avery. Mom is freaking out. She just got some crazy letter from a lawyer. Is this a joke? People are literally laughing at us. You need to stop this. I looked at the phone. My thumb hovered over the keyboard. The old Avery would have typed a paragraph. I would have explained that they stole from me. I would have defended myself. I would have tried to make them understand. But the old Avery was gone. She had been left in a driveway in Cleveland. I typed, "Please refer all questions to Marianne Klein at Klein Associates." I hit send. 10 minutes later. My phone rang. It was Darlene. I watched the screen light up. I watched the name dance across the glass. Mom. A word that was supposed to mean safety, but now meant danger. I let it ring. It went to voicemail. Then came the text from Gavin. Gavin. You serious right now? Lawyering up on your own mother after everything she did for you. You are ungrateful trash. Drop this or you will regret it. I felt a spike of fear, a conditioned response to his aggression. But then I looked at my oak desk. I looked at the accounting file. I looked at the signature that wasn't mine. I typed, "Please refer all questions to Marianne Klein at Klein Associates." Sent. Then, I did something I had never done before. I put my phone on Do Not Disturb. I turned back to my computer. I had a branding project to finish for a client in Indianapolis. I had a deadline. I had a life to live that did not involve funding the people who hated me. The silence in the apartment was absolute. It wasn't empty. It was heavy with the weight of the leverage I now held. They thought they had buried me, but they had forgotten that I was the one holding the shovel. And now, I was starting to dig. The vibration of my phone against the oak desk was not a notification. It was a seismograph reading. I had been working on a logo design for a boutique coffee roaster in Indianapolis. enjoying the way the morning light hit the river outside my window. I had forgotten, for a brief hour, that I was at war. Then, the screen lit up. It did not stop lighting up. It started with a text from Jenna. "Don't watch it. Just send the link to Marianne." Then came the Instagram notifications. 10, 20, 50. I opened the app against my better judgment. My feed was dominated by a thumbnail of Blair. She was not wearing her usual heavy makeup. She was barefaced, sitting on the floor of her bedroom, wrapped in an oversized gray blanket. The title of the video was simply, "Heartbroken." I pressed play. "I don't usually do this," Blair whispered to the camera, wiping away a tear that looked suspiciously well-timed. "I try to keep my page positive. But my family is going through something really hard right now. We were betrayed. We tried to help someone we loved get back on their feet, and instead of being grateful, they stole from us. They are trying to sue us for money they don't deserve." She sniffed. She looked directly into the lens. "It is just so hard when you invite a snake into your home," she said. "We are simple people. My mom is a saint. She gave up everything for us, and now she is crying every night because of greed. I won't say names because I am better than that, but just know money changes people." She didn't name me. She didn't have to. Within 10 minutes, the internet sleuths had connected the dots. They found the previous viral video of the eviction. They found my tagged profile from years ago. They found my professional portfolio link in my bio. I watched the comments roll in like a tidal wave of sewage. "Is this the sister the moocher imagines suing your own mom? Snake. Ungrateful brat." Then, the attack migrated. My phone pinged with an email notification. It was from the platform where I hosted my design portfolio. New review 1 star. "Avery Barnes is a thief and a liar. Would not trust her with my brand." New review 1 star. "Disgusting human being." New review 1 star. "Scammer." My rating dropped from a perfect 5 stars to 2.3 in under an hour. This was not just social media drama anymore. This was a direct strike on my livelihood. They were burning down the safety raft I had just built. Then came the email that made my blood run cold. It was from the project manager at the Indianapolis firm. Subject contract inquiry Avery. "We have received several disturbing emails regarding your personal conduct and potential legal issues. We value your work, but we need to discuss this. We cannot have negative publicity attached to our client accounts." I sat there, frozen. Darlene and Blair were not just venting, they were trying to starve me out. They knew if I lost my income, I couldn't pay Marianne. If I couldn't pay Marianne, the lawsuit would die. I wanted to scream. I wanted to go live on TikTok and scream the truth until my throat bled. I wanted to post the bank statements. No, I told myself, gripping the edge of the desk until my knuckles turned white. That is what they want. They want the show. I took screenshots of everything. The video, the comments, the fake reviews, the timestamp of the email from my boss. I forwarded it all to Marianne with a subject line, "Damages." I needed air. I grabbed my keys and went down to the parking garage. My studio was in a secure building, or so I thought. The garage required a fob for entry. I needed to drive, to move, to feel something other than this suffocating trap. I walked toward my Honda. The concrete structure was dim, echoing with the sound of distant traffic. As I reached for the door handle, a shadow detached itself from a concrete pillar. "Hey, sis." I jumped back, dropping my keys. The sound of metal hitting concrete rang out like a gunshot. Gavin was standing there. He looked bigger than I remembered. He was wearing a leather jacket that looked new, bought with my money. No doubt, and his face was a mask of forced casualness. "How did you find me?" I asked. My voice was steady, but my heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. "I am unlisted." "You are not that hard to find," Gavin said. Taking a step closer, he kicked my keys toward me, but he didn't back off. "Dayton isn't that big, and I know your car." "What do you want?" "Gavin." "I am just checking on you," he said, spreading his hands. "Mom is worried sick. She says you stopped answering her texts. She thinks you are having a breakdown. I am not having a breakdown, I said, bending down to snatch my keys while keeping my eyes on him. I am having a lawsuit. Gavin's face tightened. The concerned brother mask slipped, revealing the bully underneath. Yeah, about that, he said. He reached into his jacket pocket. For a second, I thought he had a weapon. I flinched, but he pulled out a folded piece of paper. We don't need lawyers, Avery, he said. Lawyers are expensive. They just want your money. Mom wrote this up. It is a settlement. You sign this, saying you waive any claim to the trust and the storage units. And we forget all this. Mom is even willing to give you $5,000, cash, to help you start over. $5,000. My share of the real estate alone was worth 6 figures. The storage facility generated that much in 2 years. It was an insult. I am not signing anything, I said. I backed up until my legs hit the bumper of my car. Don't be stupid, Gavin said, his voice dropping an octave. He stepped into my personal space. I could smell stale tobacco and expensive cologne. You think you can win this? You are one person. We are a family. Blair has the internet on her side. Mom has the church. You have nobody. I reached into my pocket and hit the button on the side of my phone. I had mapped it to open the voice recorder instantly. Are you threatening me? Gavin, I asked loudly. I am telling you the reality, he snapped. You are embarrassing us. You are hurting Blair's career. Mom said you wouldn't dare make this a big deal. She said you were too weak. She said you would fold the second we put pressure on you. Mom said I wouldn't dare, I repeated, making sure the microphone caught it. She knows you. Avery, Gavin shouted, losing his temper. She knows you are pathetic. She managed that trust for years without you even noticing because you were too busy playing corporate girl. She owns you. Just sign the paper. He lunged forward, trying to shove the paper against my chest. I sidestepped. Get away from me. Sign it. I am recording this. Gavin. I held the phone up, the screen glowing red with the recording timer. I am recording everything you are saying. You just admitted Mom managed the trust without my knowledge. You just admitted she knew I would be too weak to fight back. Keep talking. Please. Gavin froze. He looked at the phone. He looked at the security camera in the corner of the garage. The color drained from his face. You are a psycho, he spat. He crumpled the paper in his fist. You are going to regret this. He turned and stormed off toward the exit ramp. I didn't move until I heard the heavy metal door slam shut. Then, I scrambled into my car, locked the doors, and sat there shaking for 10 minutes. I didn't drive anywhere. I sat in the dark and emailed the audio file to Marianne. Her reply came 3 minutes later. Marianne, he admitted she managed it, explicitly. Yes, it is at the 1-minute mark. Marianne, good. They are writing their own confession. Stay inside. I am filing for a restraining order in the morning. I went back up to my apartment. I felt dirty, contaminated by his proximity. I took a shower, scrubbing my skin until it was pink. When I got out, my phone was ringing. It wasn't a blocked number. It was a local Cleveland area code. I hesitated. I had been ignoring everyone, but something about the number felt familiar. Hello? Avery. The voice was male, older, and trembling slightly. Is this Avery Barnes? Who is this? It is Arthur Henderson, from down the street, next door to your mother. Mr. Henderson. The man who had leaned out of his window and cheered when my mother threw my clothes in the trash. The man who shouted, "Clean up the neighborhood!" I have nothing to say to you. Mr. Henderson, I said, reaching to hang up. Wait, he panicked. Please, I am not calling to apologize, and to warn you. Warn me. I saw the lawyer's letter, he said quickly. The courier came to the house when I was gardening. Your mother was screaming in the backyard. She was talking to Gavin. They were talking about making sure I kept my mouth shut. I sat down on the edge of my bed. About what? The night of the live stream, he said. I was filming too, from my window. Before they started theirs, I wanted to have proof in case the police came. Because of the noise, I recorded the whole setup. And I sent it to your friend," he said. "The girl with the glasses, Jenna. She messaged me on Facebook asking if I saw anything. I didn't want to get involved. Avery, I really didn't. But if your mother is being investigated for fraud, I don't want to be an accomplice. I don't want to go to jail for lying for her. You sent the video to Jenna." "Yes, the full one, before the ring light turned on. You need to watch it. I am sorry for what I yelled. I thought Darlene told us you were on drugs. She told us you were dangerous. I didn't know." He hung up. My phone buzzed again immediately. It was Jenna. "Jenna, check your email, now." I opened my laptop. The file was large. It was titled, Henderson Footage Raw, MP4. I clicked play. The angle was from above, looking down from the neighbor's second-story window. It showed my mother's driveway 10 minutes before I arrived that night. The ring light was set up, but not turned on. Darlene and Blair were standing by the pile of trash bags. The audio was distant but clear enough. "Make sure the account papers are buried at the bottom," Darlene was saying. She was kicking the debris around. "If she sees the Klein logo, she might ask questions." "Why don't we just burn them?" Blair asked, checking her reflection in her phone. "Because burning them looks like a crime, you idiot," Darlene snapped. "Throwing them out just looks like we are cleaning up her mess. Besides, I managed that trust for ages without her knowing. She is too stupid to look through trash. She will just cry and run away. That is what she does." "What about the loan?" Gavin asked, walking into the frame. "The bank called again today about the storage units. I will handle the bank," Darlene said, smoothing her dress. "Once we kick her out, I will tell them she has gone missing or is incapacitated. I have the power of attorney paperwork drafted. I just need to fake one more signature. Now, get ready. She is turning the corner." The video ended. I sat in the silence of my apartment. It was the smoking gun. It wasn't just negligence. It wasn't just bad parenting. It was a conspiracy. They had discussed hiding the evidence. They had discussed the forgery. They had discussed declaring me incapacitated to steal the rest of the assets. I forwarded the video to Marianne. "Me. Mr. Henderson just sent this. It is over. Marianne, do not post this. Do not share this. This is our nuclear option. We save this for the deposition." The next morning, the atmosphere had changed. I didn't respond to the one-star reviews. I didn't respond to Blair's video. I didn't respond to the email from my boss, other than to say, "This is a legal matter involving identity theft and harassment. My attorney will be providing a formal statement to clear my name." But the pressure was shifting. I received a notification from a credit monitoring service I had signed up for. "Alert inquiry on your credit report. Safekeep Storage Regional Bank." The bank was getting nervous. They were auditing the loan. They were likely asking Darlene for updated documents. Or perhaps they had tried to contact me at the address Darlene had listed the house I didn't live in and got no response. Marianne CC'd me on an email she sent to the bank's legal department later that afternoon. To Regional Bank, legal debt unauthorized encumbrance on trust assets. Fraudulent signature attached. Please find the affidavit from Ms. Avery Barnes, stating she never signed for loan 88902, nor did she authorize the use of Safekeep Storage as collateral. We are prepared to provide forensic handwriting analysis. The trap was snapped. Darlene wouldn't just be fighting me anymore. She would be fighting a regional bank that wanted its $100,000 back immediately. I went to the window and looked out at the city. Somewhere in Cleveland. Darlene was probably sitting at her kitchen table, the phone ringing, the walls closing in. She was waiting for me to explode online. She was waiting for the drama, but I gave her nothing. I gave her silence. And in that silence, I let the sound of her own lies deafen her. The courier envelope that arrived at my mother's door on Tuesday morning was not an invitation. It was an ultimatum. Marianne Klein had drafted it with the precision of a sniper. There was no emotional language in it, no adjectives describing my pain or their cruelty. It was 3 pages of dry, terrifying facts, followed by a final page listing 3 distinct options. I sat in my apartment in Dayton, staring at the digital copy on my screen, imagining the moment Darlene opened the physical one. Option 1. Immediate resignation of Darlene Barnes as trustee. Full repayment of the misappropriated funds $112,000 within 30 days. A formal, notarized admission of fiduciary breach. Option 2. We proceed immediately to civil court for fraud, embezzlement, and conversion of assets. We also file a criminal complaint regarding the forged signature on the bank loan documents. Option 3. Mediation. A closed-door session with a neutral third party to negotiate a settlement and the restructuring of the trust, to take place within 7 days. The deadline to respond was 48 hours. At 10 in the morning, the notification on my laptop pinged. Delivery confirmed. At 10:15, my phone rang. It was Darlene. I stared at the screen. My heart did not race this time. My hands did not shake. I felt a strange, detached curiosity, like a scientist observing a specimen in a jar. I let it ring. 4 times, 5 times. Then it went to voicemail. A minute later, the notification popped up. New voicemail. I didn't listen to it alone. I forwarded the audio file directly to Marianne, and then I opened it on my computer to listen through my headphones. Avery. Darlene's voice filled my ears. It wasn't the screeching harpy from the driveway. It wasn't the arrogant host of the live stream. It was the voice she used when she wanted to borrow money from her friends, wavering, breathless, dripping with manufactured fragility. Avery, baby, please pick up. I just got this letter. There must be a mistake. Why didn't you talk to me first? We are family. You know I would never hurt you. I was just trying to manage things while you were getting back on your feet. Please, honey, don't let strangers get involved in our business. Call me back. Mommy loves you. Mommy loves you. I typed a quick note to Marianne. Add this to the manipulation folder. She is playing the ignorance card. Marianne replied instantly. Standard tactic. Deny. Attack. Reverse victim and offender. She is trying to make you the aggressor for hiring a lawyer. Do not respond. I didn't. I just dragged the file into the folder marked evidence. By noon. The strategy on their end had shifted. Since they couldn't reach me, they tried to control the narrative. Blair posted a new video. I watched it on a burner account I had created. She had scrubbed the eviction video from her main feed. Though the internet had already archived it in a dozen places, her new video was titled, Moving Forward with Grace. She sat on her bed, wearing a soft, oversized sweater. The lighting was warm and fuzzy. Hey guys, she said, her voice soft. I know there has been some drama on my page lately. I just want to say, families are complicated. Sometimes people get hurt, and sometimes people lash out because they are in pain. We are dealing with a really difficult private legal matter right now. Someone we trusted has decided to attack us for money. I just ask for privacy and respect for my mom, who is literally the most generous woman I know. She wiped away an imaginary tear. We are going to take the high road, she finished, because that is what Barnes women do. I scrolled down to the comments. Blair had made a critical error. She had underestimated the memory of the internet. User 449. Wait, didn't you live stream kicking your sister out like 3 weeks ago? That wasn't very private. Ohio Watcher. So you want privacy now that she lawyered up LOL? Truth Seeker. Why did you delete the other video if your mom is so generous? Why did she call her daughter a parasite? Blair was deleting comments as fast as she could. But for every one she deleted, 2 more popped up. The narrative was slipping through her fingers. She was learning a hard lesson: you cannot play the victim when the world has already seen you holding the knife. By Wednesday, the dominoes began to fall in the financial sector. Marianne had sent a copy of the affidavit regarding the forged signature to the bank holding the loan on the storage units. Banks do not like uncertainty. When a bank suspects collateral is tainted by fraud, they do not wait for a court verdict. They protect their assets. I received an email from Marianne with a forwarded notice from the bank. Subject notice of credit freeze and demand for cure. The bank had frozen the line of credit associated with the trust. But because Darlene had commingled the funds, mixing trust money with personal accounts and Gavin's business accounts. The freeze had a blast radius. Gavin found out the hard way. At 2 in the afternoon, I received a string of texts from him. They started angry and ended desperate. Gavin: my card just got declined at AutoZone. What did you do? Gavin: I have a transmission on the lift. Avery: I need parts. The account is locked. Gavin: fix this. Seriously. You are ruining my business over a stupid temper tantrum. Gavin: Mom is crying. Are you happy I read the messages and felt nothing? Gavin had used $50,000 of my money to buy his lift and pay off his debts. Now, the bank was simply turning off the tap. He wasn't losing his money. He was losing access to mine. I replied with the only sentence I was allowed to type. Please refer all questions to Marianne Klein at Klein Associates. Gavin, go to hell. While Gavin was melting down, Marianne's forensic accountant was digging up the body. We had requested the books for the safekeep storage facility. Darlene had sent over a messy stack of Excel spreadsheets that looked like they had been typed up the night before. But Marianne had subpoenaed the actual bank records from the facility's operating account. We got on a conference call at 4 o'clock on Thursday. It is worse than the loan, Marianne said. Her voice was sharp, professional. The loan was a one-time event. The theft has been monthly. What do you mean? I asked, looking at the spreadsheet she had shared on the screen. Look at the rental income, Marianne said. The facility generates roughly $8,000 a month in profit after maintenance. For the last 3 years, that money should have gone into the trust holding account. It didn't. I followed the line on the spreadsheet. Where did it go? It went to a personal checking account at a credit union, Marianne said, under the name Darlene Barnes, and from there, it was dispersed. Car payments for Blair, a boat payment. Did you know you guys have a boat? We don't have a boat, I said, baffled. Well, Gavin has a jet ski trailer and 2 jet skis registered in his name, Marianne corrected. Paid for by the storage unit revenue. Jet skis, I repeated. I was eating ramen noodles and working 60 hours a week, and my brother was riding jet skis bought with my inheritance. The total misappropriation of revenue over 3 years is roughly $280,000, Marianne said, plus the $100,000 loan. Avery, this is grand larceny. This is prison time. The weight of it settled on me. This wasn't just a family dispute anymore. My mother and siblings were criminals. They had systematically stripped the estate Aunt Sarah had left for me. Darlene must have realized the walls were closing in, because she played her final card God. On Thursday evening, I received an email from an address I didn't recognize. The subject line was, "A message from Pastor Miller." Pastor Miller was the head of the community church my mother attended. He was a nice man, but he was also easily manipulated by Darlene's tears. Dear Avery, your mother came to see me today. She is in great distress. She feels that the family is breaking apart over worldly possessions. I know you are hurting, but I urge you to remember the commandment, honor thy father and thy mother. Litigation is a path of destruction. Can we sit down and pray together? Your grandmother and Aunt Sarah are watching from above, and surely they would not want to see their legacy used to tear the family asunder. I read the email twice. I felt a flash of old guilt, the programmed response Darlene had installed in me since childhood. Don't make waves. Be the good girl. But then I looked at the spreadsheet. Jet skis, camera gear, forged signatures. Aunt Sarah hadn't left me a legacy to tear the family apart. She had left me a legacy so I wouldn't starve. Darlene was the one who had torn it apart. She had eaten the legacy. I hit reply. Dear Pastor Miller, thank you for your concern. However, this is not a spiritual matter. It is a legal matter regarding theft and fraud. If my mother wishes to discuss the $280,000 she removed from the trust without authorization, she can do so in the presence of my attorney. Please do not contact me regarding this again. I hit send. I was done honoring thieves just because they shared my DNA. Friday morning was the deadline. 48 hours were up. At 8:55, 5 minutes before the deadline, Marianne called me. We got a response, she said. And They folded, Marianne said. They chose option 3, mediation. They want to settle. Of course they do, I said. They know if we go to court, the DA gets involved. They have hired a lawyer, Marianne warned. A guy named Fletcher. He is a strip mall generalist. Mostly DUIs and divorces. He is out of his depth with trust law, but he will try to bully us. He is asking for the meeting to be held at his office. No, I said instantly. Not on their turf. Agreed, Marianne said. I have already booked a conference room at the downtown mediation center. Neutral ground, metal detectors at the door, no cameras, no phones. When? Monday morning, 9 o'clock. I will be there, I said. Avery, Marianne's voice softened slightly. You need to prepare yourself. You have seen them on screens for the last month. You have heard their voicemails, but sitting across a table from them, it is going to be different. They are going to use every emotional trigger they have. I know, I said. I looked at the silver key sitting on my desk, the key that had unlocked the truth. But they don't have power over me anymore. They are just debtors now, and I am the creditor coming to collect. Good, Marianne said. Wear a suit. Look expensive. We will see them Monday. I hung up. I walked to my closet. I didn't have a suit, but I had money now. My own money. I went out and bought a charcoal gray blazer, tailored trousers, and sharp, black heels. I bought a leather portfolio. I cut my hair into a sharp bob that framed my face. When I looked in the mirror, I didn't see the girl in the diner uniform. I didn't see the girl crying in the driveway. I saw the trustee. Monday was coming. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of my mother. I was eager to see her face when she realized that the ATM was permanently out of order. The conference room at the Mediation Center in downtown Cleveland was designed to be neutral. The walls were a calming shade of dove gray. The carpet was thick enough to swallow the sound of nervous footsteps, and the long mahogany table was shaped like an oval, so that technically there was no head of the table. But as I walked in, followed closely by Marianne Klein, the battle lines were drawn as clearly as trenches in a war zone. My family sat on the left side of the room. Darlene was wearing her navy blue Sunday suit with the pearl brooch, the outfit she wore for funerals and Easter service. She sat with her hands clasped on the table, clutching a tissue, her head bowed in a posture of performative martyrdom. She looked like a saint who had been dragged into a den of lions. Blair sat next to her. She had clearly spent hours on her no-makeup look. Her hair was pulled back in a severe bun, and she was wearing a high-necked black sweater. She looked less like a defendant and more like a celebrity facing a minor scandal, ready to cry on cue. She kept glancing at the blank wall, as if looking for a camera that wasn't there. And then there was Gavin. My brother looked terrible. The confident, swaggering mechanic who had kicked my clothes into a puddle was gone. In his place was a man who looked like he hadn't slept in 72 hours. His skin was sallow, his eyes were bloodshot, and he was wearing a dress shirt that was too tight at the neck, likely the only one he owned. He was tapping his foot rapidly against the table leg, a nervous tick that vibrated through the floor. Please, take a seat, the mediator said. He was a bald man with tired eyes named Mr. Sterling. I sat down. I placed my leather portfolio on the table. I didn't look at Darlene. I didn't look at Gavin. I looked straight ahead at their lawyer. He was a man named Fletcher, wearing a suit that was slightly too shiny and a tie that was too loud. He smiled at me, a greasy, condescending smile. Well, Fletcher began, leaning back in his chair. We are all here. Before we get into the heavy legal jargon, I just want to say that my client, Mrs. Barnes, is heartbroken that it has come to this. This is a family matter. It is a misunderstanding between a mother and daughter. We really feel this shouldn't be in a legal setting at all. Marianne didn't smile. She didn't lean back. She opened her file folder with a crisp snap. Mr. Fletcher, Marianne said, her voice cool and sharp as a scalpel. This ceased to be a private family matter the moment your client set up a professional lighting rig in their driveway and broadcast the eviction of my client to 3,000 strangers. They took it to the court of public opinion. We are simply bringing it to a court of law." Darlene let out a small, strangled sob into her tissue. "I was just at my wit's end," she whispered. "A mother can only take so much." "Let's stick to the agenda," Mr. Sterling interjected gently. "We are here to discuss the accounting of the Sarah Jenkins Trust and the alleged misappropriation of funds." Fletcher cleared his throat. "Right, the trust. Look, Mrs. Barnes admits that the paperwork might not be perfect. She is a mother, not an accountant. She used the funds available to her to keep the family afloat, to keep the house running, to feed Avery when she came crawling back home with no job." Darlene looked up then, her eyes wet and pleading. "I paid the electric bill," she said, looking at me. "I paid for the water you used for your long showers. I bought the groceries. You didn't pay rent for the first month. Avery, I carried you, just like I carried you for 18 years. And now you are counting pennies. You are suing me for keeping a roof over your head. It was a good performance. It was the speech she had used to control me my entire life. I sacrificed for you, so you owe me your silence." "We are not talking about pennies, Mrs. Barnes," Marianne said. "We are talking about $280,000 in storage unit revenue over 3 years, and a $100,000 business loan taken out in Avery's name without her consent. That is nearly $400,000. That is a lot of groceries." "It went into the family pot," Gavin snapped, unable to help himself. His voice cracked. "We needed money for the business. If the business fails, nobody eats. Mom did what she had to do." "The business," Marianne repeated. She pulled a sheet of paper from her stack and slid it across the table. "Is that what we are calling the 2 Sea-Doo jet skis registered to Gavin Barnes, or the $4,000 camera lens purchased for Blair B. Creative?" Blair flinched. "That was an investment," she argued, her voice shrill. "My content brings in potential revenue. I was building a brand. You guys don't understand how the creator economy works. And honestly, the hate I'm getting online right now because of you, it is toxic. I can't even post without people calling me a thief. I am the victim here." I spoke for the first time. My voice was quiet, but in the acoustically dampened room, it carried like a bell. "You are not the victim, Blair," I said. "You are the cinematographer." Blair's mouth snapped shut. "And you, Mom," I continued, turning to Darlene. "You didn't use that money to feed me. I worked double shifts at the diner. I paid you $400 a month. I bought my own food. You used that money to pretend you were rich. You used it to buy Gavin a lift he didn't earn, and Blair a career she didn't work for." "I raised you," Darlene shrieked, slamming her hand on the table. The mask of the saint fell away instantly, replaced by the face I knew too well. "I gave you life. You ungrateful little. How dare you sit there in that expensive suit and lecture me? You would be nothing without me." "Mrs. Barnes," the mediator warned. "She chose money over her own mother," Gavin yelled, pointing a shaking finger at me. "Look at her. She is cold as ice. She doesn't care about us. She just wants a check." "I didn't choose money," I said, looking Gavin dead in the eye. "I chose the truth. You guys chose the drama. You chose the likes. You chose the performance. I am just finishing the scene you started." "Enough," Marianne said. She held up a hand, silencing the room. "We are done with the emotional appeals. We are dealing with facts, and the facts are damning." She reached into her file and pulled out a flash drive. She set it on the table. "This," Marianne said, "is the full, unedited footage of the night in question, recorded by your neighbor, Mr. Henderson." Darlene's face went pale. The red flush of anger drained away, leaving her looking gray and old. "It captures the 10 minutes before the live stream began." Marianne continued. "It captures you, Mrs. Barnes, instructing your children to bury the legal documents from Klein Associates at the bottom of the trash bag so Avery wouldn't see them. It captures you admitting that you had been managing the trust without her knowledge for years. It captures you discussing the plan to declare Avery mentally incapacitated to secure the remaining assets. Silence. Absolute, suffocating silence. Fletcher, the lawyer, looked at Darlene. He looked horrified. He evidently hadn't been told about that part of the story. We also have the forensic handwriting analysis confirming the forgery on the loan documents, Marianne added, stacking another paper on the pile. And we have the bank statements showing the direct transfer of funds from the trust to Blair's personal account and Gavin's business account. So, Marianne said, leaning forward, here is where we stand. We are not just asking for the money back. We are asserting that Mrs. Barnes has committed fraud. Now wait a minute, Fletcher stammered, trying to regain control. We can work out a payment plan. My client can liquidate some assets. We can structure a repayment over 10 years. There is no need to destroy her reputation. Reputation? I asked. You mean the reputation she has with the church group, or the reputation she has with the bank she defrauded? We are willing to offer a settlement, Fletcher said, sweating. Darlene stays on as trustee, but we implement a strict oversight committee. She pays back 50% of the missing funds over 5 years. We forget the criminal charges. Marianne smiled. It was a terrifying smile. No, she said. She opened the trust document, the original one. Signed by Aunt Sarah years ago. She flipped to the back, to a section that had been flagged with a red sticky note. You see, Marianne said, Sarah Jenkins was a shrewd woman. She anticipated this. She anticipated that Darlene might struggle with the responsibility, so she included Article 9, Section C. Marianne read aloud, her voice clear and precise. In the event that the trustee is found to have willfully concealed the existence of the trust from the beneficiary, or has used trust assets as collateral for personal debts without the express written consent of the beneficiary, the trustee shall be immediately removed. Furthermore, any debts incurred by the trustee in the name of the trust shall become the personal liability of the trustee, and their interest in any shared assets within the trust, including real estate, shall be forfeited to satisfy the debt. Marianne closed the folder. Translation, Marianne said, looking at Darlene. You don't just owe the money back. You just lost your house. The room seemed to tilt. Darlene stared at Marianne. Her mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. She looked at the house she had lived in for 30 years, the house she had lorded over me, the house that was her fortress. You can't take my house, Darlene whispered. I own 30% of it. And you owe the trust $400,000, Marianne said. Your 30% share is worth roughly $150,000. The trust will absorb your share to cover part of the debt. You will still owe the rest, but the house. The house belongs to the trust now, and since Avery is the sole remaining beneficiary. Marianne looked at me. Avery owns the house, she finished. Gavin made a sound like a wounded animal. He put his head in his hands. Blair was staring at me with wide, terrified eyes. They realized it all at once. The loan was called. The income stream was gone. The house was gone. They were not just broke. They were evicted. This is not fair, Darlene hissed. Sarah wouldn't wanted this. Sarah loved me. Sarah knew you, I corrected her. She knew you would steal from me if you had the chance, and she made sure I had a way to get it back. Fletcher looked at his clients. He closed his notebook. He knew he had lost. We need a recess, Fletcher said, his voice weak. I need to confer with my clients. Of course, Mr. Sterling said, looking relieved to have a break from the tension. Let's take 20 minutes. There's coffee in the lobby. Fletcher stood up. Gavin stood up, looking like he might vomit. Blair grabbed her purse, her hands shaking. Darlene didn't move for a long moment. She stared at me across the table. Her eyes were full of hate, but under the hate, there was fear. Real, primal fear. You are destroying this family, she whispered. No, Mom, I said calmly. I am just balancing the books. They shuffled out of the room. The door clicked shut behind them. I sat there in the silence. The air conditioning hummed. Marianne leaned over and poured herself a glass of water. That went well, she said dryly. They are going to beg, I said. When they come back, They are going to beg. They will, Marianne agreed. They are going to offer you everything they don't have. They are going to promise to be better. They are going to cry. What do you want to do? Avery. I looked at the empty chairs on the other side of the table. I pictured them in the lobby, frantic, turning on each other. I pictured Gavin realizing his business was dead. I pictured Blair realizing she had no studio. I pictured Darlene realizing she was a guest in my house. I don't want their promises, I said. And I don't want their apologies. I want them to sign. Sign what? Everything, I said. I want a complete surrender. I want the house. I want the storage unit management transferred to a third party. I want a confession, and I want one more thing. What is that? Marianne asked. I thought about the live stream. I thought about the thousands of people who had watched me being humiliated. I thought about the comments. I want a retraction, I said. Public, video, on all their channels. They need to tell the world exactly what they did, Marianne smiled. That is the kill shot. Avery, if they do that, their social standing is dead. Blair's career is over. They wanted a reality show, I said, standing up and smoothing my blazer. I am just giving them the season finale. I walked to the window and looked down at the street. I saw people walking by, living their normal lives. I felt a strange sense of calm. The anger was gone. The hurt was gone. All that was left was the cold, hard math of consequence. In 20 minutes, they would walk back through that door, and I would show them exactly what a parasite looked like when it was the one holding the checkbook. The 20 minutes of recess felt longer than the entire 6 months I had spent living in my mother's basement. When the heavy mahogany door finally creaked open, the air in the conference room shifted. It was no longer the charged atmosphere of a battle about to begin. It was the stale, heavy air of a surrender. Darlene walked in first. She had reapplied her lipstick, a bright coral shade that looked jarring against her pale, ash-colored skin. She did not look at me. She focused entirely on pulling out her chair and smoothing her skirt, performing a series of small, meaningless actions to avoid making eye contact. Blair followed. Her eyes were red. She had been crying, and not the pretty, single-tear crying she did for her followers. Her mascara was smudged in the corner of her left eye. She slumped into her chair, clutching her phone like a lifeline. Though the screen was dark, Gavin brought up the rear. He looked like a man walking to the gallows. His shoulders were hunched, and the arrogant swagger that usually defined him had evaporated, leaving behind a scared boy in a cheap dress shirt. They sat. Their lawyer, Fletcher, cleared his throat. He shuffled his papers, looking for a way to spin a complete defeat into a strategic withdrawal. We have discussed the situation, Fletcher began, his voice lacking its earlier bluster. And while my clients maintain that their actions were rooted in a desire to protect the family legacy, they recognize that mistakes were made regarding the administrative side of the trust. Marianne did not blink. She just waited. We are prepared to accept the removal of Darlene Barnes as trustee, Fletcher continued. We agree to transfer management to a third-party firm, and regarding the funds, we are willing to structure a repayment plan for the unauthorized withdrawals. We propose 10% of the monthly storage revenue going forward until the debt is satisfied. Marianne laughed. It was a short, sharp sound that made Gavin flinch. 10%, Marianne asked. Mr. Fletcher, at that rate, the debt would be paid off in 40 years. Avery will be 70 years old. That is not a repayment plan. That is an insult. We are open to negotiation, Fletcher said quickly. We are done negotiating, I said. I leaned forward. I placed my hands flat on the table. The wood felt cool under my palms. I looked at each of them in turn. Here are the terms, I said, my voice steady. 1. Darlene is removed as trustee effective immediately. 2. The management of Safekeep Storage is transferred to a professional property management firm of my choosing. 3. The $100,000 loan is refinanced immediately into Darlene's personal name, removing the trust assets as collateral. If the bank refuses, She sells personal assets to cover the principal. Gavin made a noise of protest, but I kept going. 4. Regarding the $280,000 in misappropriated revenue, I want 50% of the net profits from the facility every month until the principal is paid in full, plus statutory interest, and I want a lien placed on Gavin's mobile mechanic business and Blair's studio equipment to ensure payment. You can't put a lien on my business, Gavin shouted, standing up. I need that credit line to operate if you lock me down. I can't work. Then you should not have bought a $50,000 lift with stolen money, I replied calmly. Sit down, Gavin, he glared at me, his face turning a blotchy red. But he sat down. We can work with those financial terms, Fletcher said, wiping sweat from his forehead. Is that all? No, I said. There is one more thing. I reached into my portfolio and pulled out a single sheet of paper. It was not a legal document. It was a script. This, I said, sliding it across the table to Darlene, is for you, and for Blair, and for Gavin. Darlene picked it up. She squinted at the text. As she read, her mouth tightened into a thin, angry line. Her hands began to shake. No, she whispered. Absolutely not. What is it? Blair asked, leaning over to read. Her eyes went wide. Are you crazy? I can't post this. It will ruin my engagement. It goes against my entire brand identity. What does it say? Gavin asked. It is a retraction. I said, it is a public statement. You will record a video. You will post it on all your platforms. TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. You will leave it up permanently, and you will read exactly what is on that page. I can't say this, Darlene hissed, throwing the paper down. I willfully withheld financial information from my daughter. I used her humiliation for views. Avery, this is cruel. This is public shaming. Can't I apologize to you here? In private, I will write you a letter. I will apologize to you every day. A private apology, I asked. I felt a cold smile touch my lips. Did you evict me in private? Mom, did you call me a parasite in a letter? Did you keep the ring light off when Gavin kicked my life into a puddle? That was different, she pleaded. I was emotional. You chose the venue, I said. You chose the audience. You wanted 3,000 people to watch me fall. Now, those same 3,000 people are going to watch you tell the truth. That is the price. If you want to settle, you post the video. If you don't post the video, we leave this room and Marianne files the civil fraud complaint and sends the evidence to the district attorney. This is blackmail, Blair spat. It is a settlement condition, Marianne corrected her. And frankly, it is generous. The alternative is a forensic audit that will likely expose tax evasion on that stolen income. Do you really want the IRS involved in Blair be creative? Blair went pale. She sank back into her chair. We have no choice, Gavin muttered. He looked at Darlene. Mom, if they audit the accounts, they will see I use the money for the truck payments too. Not just the lift. They will see everything. You used it for what? Darlene snapped, turning to him. The down payment on the truck, Gavin confessed, his voice rising in panic. And the lighting rig for Blair. I moved the money around. Okay, I thought we could pay it back before anyone noticed. The room went silent. Gavin had just driven the final nail into his own coffin. He had admitted to commingling funds and premeditated concealment. He had admitted that the live stream wasn't just a temper tantrum. It was a distraction to cover the fact that they needed my parasite narrative to hide the fact that they were bleeding the trust dry. Darlene looked at her son. She looked at the lawyer, who had his head in his hands. She looked at me. Fine, she whispered. The word sounded like it was made of broken glass. I will sign. I will do the video. It took another 2 hours to finalize the paperwork. The sound of the pen scratching against the paper was the only noise in the room. Sign here. Repayment schedule. Sign here. Transfer of trustee powers. Sign here. Confession of judgment. Sign here. The script for the video. When Darlene signed the last page, she dropped the pen. She looked older than I had ever seen her. The The vibrant, controlling matriarch was gone. In her place was a woman who was drowning in debt she could no longer hide. "I hope you are happy," she said to me as she stood up. "You have your money, but you don't have a family anymore." I stood up. I picked up my portfolio. I looked her in the eye, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel the need to seek her approval. "I never had a family, Mom," I said. "I had a fan club that charged admission, and I just canceled my subscription." I walked out of the room. I walked out of the building. I stepped onto the sidewalk in downtown Cleveland. The air was cold, but the sun was shining. I took a deep breath, and my lungs filled with oxygen that felt cleaner than anything I had breathed in years. 3 days later, the notification popped up on my phone. Marianne had given them 72 hours to post the video. They had waited until the 71st hour. I sat at my oak desk in Dayton, a cup of coffee in my hand, and clicked the link. The video was posted on Blair's main account. There was no ring light this time. The lighting was harsh, the overhead kitchen light casting long shadows over their faces. They sat on the couch, Darlene in the middle, Gavin and Blair on either side. They looked like hostages. "Hi, everyone," Darlene began. She was reading from a cue card held off-camera. Her voice was flat. "We are making this video to correct some statements made in previous posts regarding my daughter, Avery." She swallowed hard. "We wrongly accused Avery of being a financial burden." Darlene read, "The truth is, Avery was the primary beneficiary of a family trust that I was managing. I withheld information about this trust from her. The lifestyle we displayed on this channel was funded in part by assets that legally belonged to her." Blair took over, her voice barely a whisper. "We created a narrative that was false for the sake of content. We deeply regret the harm we caused to her reputation and her livelihood." Gavin mumbled his part, looking at the floor. "We are taking steps to repay what is owed and have transferred management of the family assets to a third party." The video ended abruptly. No music, no like and subscribe, just a black screen. I scrolled down to the comments. The internet, which had been so quick to tear me down, was even quicker to turn on them. The pivot was brutal. User 77. "Wait, so you guys were the parasites. The irony is insane. Create with Kate." Unfollowing. "Imagine stealing from your sister and then making content about how broke she is. That is evil." Brandwatch. "This is why transparency matters." Blocked. Within 24 hours, Blair lost 4 major brand partnerships. I saw the emails because Marianne had subpoenaed her business contracts, and the termination notices were forwarded to us as part of the asset monitoring. One skincare brand cited violation of moral clause as the reason for dropping her. Gavin wasn't spared. The bank, seeing the public admission of financial mismanagement, accelerated the call on his loans. He had to sell the new truck and the jet skis at a loss just to keep the garage doors open. He laid off his 2 assistants and was back to turning wrenches himself, working 12-hour days to make the restitution payments to me. And Darlene, 2 weeks after the settlement, I received a notification from the new property management company. A deposit had been made into my account. Deposit $5,000. Source sale of personal property. Darlene Barnes. I found out later from Mr. Henderson, the neighbor, that Darlene had sold her diamond engagement ring, the one she had always sworn would stay in the family forever. She had sold it to a pawn shop to make the first payment on the debt she owed me. The woman who had thrown my life into the trash was now selling her own history to pay for my future. I closed my laptop. The sun was setting over the river in Dayton, casting a golden light across my apartment. My desk was clean. My phone was silent. I had no unread messages from family members demanding money. I had no anxiety about where my rent would come from. I had my job. I had my home. I had my name back. I looked at the silver key, which now sat in a small velvet box on my shelf. I didn't need it anymore to access the money that was all digital now, but I kept it as a reminder. It was a reminder that sometimes, when people try to bury you, they don't realize you are a seed. They threw dirt on me. They rained insults on me, and they thought I would rot. Instead, I grew. I took a sip of my coffee. It tasted perfect. They could keep their likes. They could keep their views. They could keep their drama. I had the receipts, and for the first time in my life, the ledger was balanced. Thank you so much for listening to this story. If you enjoyed seeing justice served, please let me know in the comments where you are listening from. I love hearing from you guys. Don't forget to subscribe to Maya Revenge Stories, like the video, and hit that hype button so we can share this story with even more people.